Main Machinist here again. We are going to do a video today, the exhaustive guide to cleaning Volkswagen intake manifold heat riser pipes. This is something you've got to go over with your air-cooled Volkswagen. If you are trying to restore your car, you're trying to enjoy it for a daily driver, you're trying to find out why it's not performing up to par, this is one of the places you've got to start to look. This is an overlooked problem that people are constantly encountering on their air-cooled VW Type 1 engine. So we're going to take a look on this video of the two different types of intake manifolds, the two basic different types. They both have basically an identical heat riser system. We're going to look at the heat risers, look at the manifolds, and we're going to go through the ways to clean these heat riser tubes out so that your car will run correctly. A lot of times on the online forums, I'm seeing people that are having trouble with their Volkswagen. They're saying things like, oh my gosh, my Beetle, it's hesitating all the time. It doesn't idle correctly. It has flat spots. I'm chasing down things with my car. I've changed the carburetor. I've tried adjusting the valves. I've messed with the timing. Whatever I do, it just doesn't seem to help the engine to run correctly. What's wrong? Check the heat risers. If there is no airflow from tube to tube on your heat riser, if you cannot get air flowing fully through this pipe, your Beetle will never run properly. The heat risers are not only for winter weather. It's an all-time thing. It's year-round. It has to have clear heat risers in order to run right. So let's jump right into this. We're going to look at the ways to clean it out. We're going to look at the differences between the intake manifolds, and we're going to do this. First, let's take a look at the different types of intake manifolds themselves. Now, this could be a lot more exhaustive, but it doesn't really need to be to pertain to cleaning the heat riser tubes. What you've got to look for on your Volkswagen is you're either going to have a single port intake manifold or a dual port intake manifold. This is the single port manifold. It's one piece. You can see that it goes all the way down to the cylinder heads. This is a dual port manifold. You notice the difference is it does not go all the way to the cylinder head. You will find these connected to the ends that connect to the cylinder head. Regardless of which one you have, what you're concerned with are these small pipes here that go to the muffler system. These are the heat risers. In order to properly heat the carburetor on a Volkswagen air-cooled engine, which would sit here, you must have exhaust flow from one side of the pipe to the other side of the pipe. As this pipe has hot air running through it, it warms the intake and allows you to have a good running engine. It allows that carburetor to work properly and for combustion to take place in the heads correctly. What you'll see here is a pipe that I took out from the inside of a muffler. Inside your muffler is another pipe that looks like this. I've taken it out of a muffler. When they bolt together, there is heat as a vacuum is created as exhaust gases inside the muffler pass by this pipe, and it causes air to flow up through the heat riser system and down into another pipe on the other side, which circulates the hot air through the system. That's how the system works. The problem is, midway usually inside the heat riser pipes, in here, you begin to have carbon buildup on the inside of the pipe. When the carbon compacts in here, you no longer have airflow through the system, and without airflow going all the way through your pipe, you don't get to heat the intake manifold properly. These pipes are not connected on the inside. This aluminum here holds them together only for the purpose of transferring heat through the aluminum into the intake manifold up here. A lot of people think, oh, well, these are all connected. Well, how could they be connected? Then you'd have exhaust running up into your intake, recirculating through the engine. That's not how it works. The exhaust only goes from one side of the pipe to the other. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you how to test the intake manifold when it's off the car to see whether the heat risers are clogged. You could do this on the car if you pulled the muffler. It's going to be the same way as I'm going to show you right now, but let's take a look. We're going to use a single port intake manifold. The process is the exact same on a dual port. This manifold right here, I know for a fact is clogged. You cannot get air to pass from one side of the heat riser to the other. I'm going to show you that with some compressed air right now. Let's put the manifold in the vise. You could do this on the ground if you want, but I like to work with a vise. We've got some compressed air here. Know your safety with compressed air, of course. I got the air gun in one side of the heat riser. Let's see if I can get air to the other side. Nope. I can feel the air coming out and hitting my hand. There is no air passing through the heat riser pipe. Let me show you what it looks like and sounds like on a good heat riser. This is one I know to be clean. You hear the difference? I have full airflow to the other side of the heat riser pipe, which means that this one's clear and it will be ready to be installed on the vehicle. If your heat riser doesn't make that sound and give you full airflow, you need to clean it out. These are the 4 ways that you can get a heat riser cleared. Number 1 is going to be boring with a cable. We're going to make a cable out of a piece of throttle cable or a clutch cable or any kind of cable you have around that can bore through the carbon in the intake manifold heat riser and clear it out. This is one of the more successful methods that I've found. Number 2, sandblasting. We're going to put it in a media blaster cabinet and we're going to try to blast out the carbon within the heat riser and clear it out. Number 3, this is the one that I do not recommend, but it's a common one because it's in that book, How to Keep Your Volkswagen Alive. Now I'm going to say right up front, that's not a very good book if you really want to keep your Volkswagen alive. There's a lot of bad information in that book. Get the Bentley manual and do it the Volkswagen way. But this method is to use an oxyacetylene torch to heat up the heat riser tube, shoot the flame in there, and then reduce your fuel when it's hot so that the carbon becomes the fuel for the torch and it burns out the other side. Do not recommend this method, but we're going to cover it because it's out there in the Volkswagen community. Number 4, drilling and welding, the most extreme form of clearing a heat riser. I'm going to show you where to drill, how to drill it, and then where you'd have to TIG weld back the heat risers themselves to get them closed back up. So let's take a look. Let's start in with method 1, boring with a cable. I've created here a cable that I'm going to use like a boring tool. I'm sorry it doesn't really zoom in well. This is left frayed. It helps to cut through the carbon. I've also TIG welded this end so that it's smooth, and that did work for me as well. You can try either one you want. What we're going to do is attempt to bore through the carbon in the heat riser by using this almost like a toilet snake or any kind of an auging cable. I'm going to shove this down in here as far as we can. Then with the drill on the other side, I'm going to straighten the cable out. And kind of guide with my hand. I'm going to warn you, this is very dangerous. Never, ever wear gloves while attempting to use the boring cable method. The cable will wrap around your gloves and it will cut you. It can actually rip a chunk of flesh out of your hand. Do not wear gloves of any kind. Even these nitrile gloves can get wound up in it. I've had it happen. I'm going to continue with the boring action. It is getting some of the carbon out. This is a long process. I'm not going to show you the whole thing because this can take sometimes even an hour. I moved to the other side. I'm getting some traction now from, I've gone back and forth, back and forth. This heat riser is starting to clear up. A lot of carbon has come out. What I've done is as I've bored, I've taken out of the vise, hit it on the ground, used compressed air, some soot would come out, put it back in, continue to use the boring method. Now you can see I'm really able to feed this through. I think I'm going to have, the cable's got to be close. Okay, the cable will be coming out the other side, I believe. Nope, and I can see carbon coming out the other side right now, being pushed out. cable went all the way through. Let's go on this side. My cable back down in there if I can. It's important to go, when you get it going through on one side, go to the other side, feed it back through the other way. All right, I've got this thing clear. All right, let's watch for carbon. Oh, there's the last of it. All right, I've taken that intake manifold out of the vise. The heat riser is clear. The boring method was a success. Now let's look at method number 2, blasting. Okay, method number 2, blasting. I've got an intake manifold in the cabinet. I've already done some prep blasting on it. You saw it over there on the table if you look closely. What I'm going to do is take my blasting gun, and I know you can't see this real well with the dust and everything in the cabinet, but I'm going to put the sandblasting nozzle right into that heat riser. You can see here through the window a little bit. The gun is going to be put right up into the heat riser, and I'm going to attempt to blast through the carbon in the heat riser. All right, we're back at the vise after quite a bit of sandblasting. Make sure you wear your proper PPE if you're sandblasting. I did over there. We have suction on that cabinet and all that. But, you know, there's still residue on here. This stuff's very, very bad for you. But let's test it now. I believe I saw sand going all the way through the pipe. But we're just going to test her out. Again, I'm going to use our compressed air. You hear that? This pipe's clear. The blasting method was able to get the heat riser clean. Okay, here's the third method of cleaning the heat riser pipe. I have a heat riser here known to be clogged. This is the oxyacetylene method. I'm not going to demonstrate this in here because it gives off a lot of smoke. If you start getting the heat riser to clean up with the oxyacetylene torch, you will smoke. You have to do it outside. It will smoke up your entire garage. It's very bad for you to breathe that in. It is, and honestly, I believe this method to be somewhat unsafe because of the way it makes you use the torch. I will describe it here. I do not recommend it. What you would do if you were going to use the oxyacetylene method of cleaning the heat riser, according to the book, How to Keep Your Volkswagen Alive, is you would ignite your torch. You would keep the torch, to begin with, a regular flame or towards a carburizing flame. You would begin to heat inside the heat riser to blow the heat and heat up the entire tube. When you began to see smoke coming back out as the carbon started to burn, you would go here to your fuel nozzle on your torch handle, and you would back your fuel off or close the valve to produce an oxygen-rich flame that would begin to use the carbon for fuel and burn all the carbon up through the pipe. Again, a lot of smoke, potentially hazardous if you don't know how to use an oxyacetylene torch properly, and I've also seen damage done to the pipes. I'll show you where some damage was done on this pipe from using, or an attempt to use, the oxyacetylene method. If you notice on this pipe, you can see the discoloration where this pipe was heated extremely hot from an oxyacetylene torch attempting to burn out the carbon inside the heat riser pipe. This can make the pipe very brittle, and it can burn through the pipe extremely easily. In fact, on the other side of the heat riser pipe, you'll notice there is a pinhole which was created when this pipe was heated improperly with the oxyacetylene torch, and it burned through a weak spot on the heat riser. Now this heat riser would not only require more work to get it unclogged, but it would require it to be repaired. Let's look at the final method, drilling, in order to clear the heat riser pipe. This heat riser pipe was bad, and so I sacrificed it in order to demonstrate this. It's bad because in here, the pipe had already been rotted through. It would have been a very difficult repair. Know that if you try to use this method, you may destroy the intake manifold in the process. But in the worst cases of clogged heat risers, this is often the only way to get them clear. I'm going to show you where it would be drilled and how to drill it. If you flip the heat riser around, you can see here, almost if you put it up so that the carburetor would be on the it's upside down. At the bends in the heat riser pipe, you're going to need to drill some holes, as you can see here. If this pipe wasn't destroyed already, I would have taken the time to drill this other pipe to show you going in from the other direction. But you'll drill here and you'll drill here at the bends in the heat riser. You will need a long drill. I got this drill bit from Harbor Freight. It works perfect for doing clogged heat risers. You'll take your drill bit, put it in a hand drill, go in through where you drilled the hole in the bend on the heat riser pipe, and you will drill all the way through as far as you can from this side, which gives us, let's see, more than halfway through the heat riser pipe itself. Then you would go from the other side, drill here at the bend, drill as far as you could this direction, and the pipe would be clear. This works, but it's very labor intensive because after you get the pipe clear, obviously you can't leave the hole. So the best way to fix that is to prep this, get this sanded clear or sandblast it and get it very, very clean. Go to someone with a TIG welder, or if you know how to TIG weld, and fill that hole back in. Then you might want to take a belt sander to smooth it off, and you can get it to look just like it did from the factory. No one will be able to tell. We've done that before in clogged heat risers. This way works very efficiently, but it's very labor intensive. All right, let's review in closing. We saw the boring method where we took a clutch cable or a throttle cable or just a cable that you can get at a hardware store to make an auger boring tool to go through the heat riser and clean it out. Took us some time doing that, but we were successful in clearing the heat riser pipe. We look at method 2, the sandblaster. That works best when you have maybe a little bit of airflow through the pipe, as we did on that one. I knew if I put that in the sandblasting cabinet and just kept giving it the air and the blasting media with a little bit of air squeaking through to start with, I knew it would clear it out to be fully clear, which it was. 3, we talked about the oxyacetylene method, which I don't recommend. You can try it if you'd like to. Make sure you use a good caution and good safety procedures in running the torch. And last, we looked at the drilling method. It's guaranteed to get it clean, but it's a lot of work because you have to TIG weld up where you drill the holes. So I hope you enjoyed this exhaustive and definitive guide to cleaning out heat riser pipes on an air-cooled Volkswagen. Again, I'm the main machinist. Please like and subscribe, share with your friends, keep those air-cooled vehicles running.